Amara James believed in fairy tales, not the kind with glass slippers or enchanted roses, but the kind built with loyalty, patience, and love that withstands storms. When she married Jaden Montgomery, she thought she'd found that love. 5 years later, at 32, Amara was pregnant with their first child, and the dream felt real. But dreams can rot from the inside. Jaden, successful and sharp-tongued, came from old money. His parents, Peter and Lorraine Montgomery, ran in elite circles, country clubs, gala fundraisers, and quiet power. Amara, the daughter of a retired schoolteacher and a mechanic, never quite fit into their manicured world. They called her eloquent, but never one of us. At first, Amara didn't mind. She wasn't marrying a family. She was marrying Jaden. But over the years, Lorraine's pointed remarks about her ordinary background began to wear her down. So did the social snubs, the dinner parties where she was overlooked, and the unsolicited comparisons to Kayla Whitmore, the flawless daughter of the Montgomerys' close friends. Kayla was everything Amara wasn't. Light-skinned with honey-blonde curls, Ivy League educated, and effortlessly poised. She was the woman Lorraine whispered about when she thought Amara couldn't hear. She's what Jaden needs, a real partner. It started small. Jaden came home later. He answered texts with clipped responses. He stopped kissing her forehead in the mornings. Amara blamed work stress, the pregnancy, anything but what her heart already feared. Until one night, when Jaden's phone buzzed and he rolled over to silence it, she saw the message. "Kayla, I hate waking up without you. She doesn't deserve you." Amara felt the world tilt. She stood, heart pounding, and walked to the bathroom, splashing cold water on her face. She stared at herself in the mirror. 6 months pregnant, eyes swollen from crying the night before, still clinging to the fairy tale. She confronted him the next morning. He didn't deny it. He didn't flinch. "Look," Jaden said, arms crossed, "we're not working. You've changed. You're always tired, emotional, distant." "I'm pregnant," she snapped, "with your child. And I didn't ask for that. You wanted a baby. You wanted this life. I didn't sign up for misery." The next week, she came home to find the locks changed. Her clothes were packed in black garbage bags. Kayla's perfume lingered in the air. "This is my house," Jaden said flatly. "You can stay with your sister. We'll figure custody later." Amara called Lorraine in desperation. Her response was a knife. "You should have kept your husband satisfied. Maybe then he wouldn't have needed comfort elsewhere." Imani, Amara's older sister, opened her apartment door with a gasp and pulled her inside. She didn't ask questions. She just held Amara as she cried, both arms wrapped around her and the child she carried. They turned the guest room into a nursery. Imani cooked meals. She handled calls Amara couldn't bear to answer. When Amara went into labor 2 months later, Imani held her hand through every scream. Zion came into the world quietly, eyes wide, fists clenched. Amara looked into his face and found a new purpose. Over the next year, she rebuilt her life. She worked remotely as a virtual assistant, started freelancing for small businesses, and studied digital branding at night. Zion napped beside her while she built proposals and pitched clients. Slowly, the money started coming in. She designed her own line of handcrafted baby wraps, born from necessity. Zion was colicky, and the wraps calmed him. Friends started asking for them, then strangers online. She named the brand Zion and Crown, a nod to the tiny king who saved her. A celebrity mom stumbled upon one of her posts and shared it. Orders poured in. Within months, she had to hire help. By the time Zion turned 1, Zion and Crown was a sensation. Amara moved out of Imani's place and into a modest but stylish townhouse. She hung photos of herself and Zion on the walls. She never once reached out to Jaden. He hadn't tried to see Zion, and that was fine by her. She didn't know what had become of him. Jaden's life on the surface sparkled. He posted pictures of himself and Kayla at exclusive resorts, drinking champagne, smiling with empty eyes. Kayla redecorated the house Amara once called home. She erased Amara's existence, donated her books, replaced her curtains, tossed her wedding dress. Kayla, sharp and strategic, played the long game. She praised Jaden's ideas, encouraged bold investments, and convinced him to open joint accounts. She introduced him to her financial advisor, who quietly funneled assets into offshore accounts under Kayla's name. Jaden, still bathing in ego, didn't notice the gradual tightening of the noose. She convinced him to give her power of attorney for emergencies. He signed without reading. She told him she wanted to feel secure, so he signed over one of his investment properties to her, then another. Then she pushed him to sell his business stake, promising they'd launch something bigger together. And one morning he woke up to find her gone. The house was empty. So were the bank accounts. So was the wine cellar. All she left was a single note. "You were never the prize, Jaden. You were the wallet. Tell your mother I said thank you for the intro." He went to his parents. Lorraine burst into tears. Peter stared at his son with quiet fury. "You lost our legacy over a woman," he growled. "You deserve what you got." They refused to help him financially. Jaden found himself in a rented studio, eating microwave noodles, scrolling through photos of Zion online. He reached for his phone and called Amara. She didn't answer. He called again. On the third try, she picked up. "Amara, it's me." Silence. I was wrong. I lost everything. Kayla, she took it all, the house, the accounts. I made a mistake." "You made many," Amara said, voice like frost. "You left me on the street pregnant. You let your mother call me a parasite. You let that woman wear my robe while you threw out my life." "I just want to see my son." She paused. "Zion doesn't need your confusion. He needs peace. Something you never gave me. Live with your choices, Jaden. I did." She hung up. Jaden stared at the wall, the silence echoing louder than any scream. Months passed. Amara's business expanded. She opened a flagship store. Zion and Crown became a household name. She spoke at conferences. She was featured in Forbes. She partnered with nonprofits to support single mothers. Zion thrived. He grew into a bright, curious toddler who danced when his mother sang and fell asleep holding her hand. Jaden faded into obscurity. The business world that once welcomed him now laughed behind his back. Kayla was a ghost, impossible to trace. His name, once respected, was now a cautionary tale. One day, at a gala honoring women in entrepreneurship, Amara stood on stage in a white gown, Zion on her hip. Cameras flashed. Applause thundered. She looked out at the crowd, her voice steady. "To every woman who was told she wasn't enough, you are. To every mother who was abandoned, you are not alone. And to every queen who had to rebuild her crown from ashes, shine." She walked off stage, head high, as Zion rested on her shoulder. Amara wasn't looking for love, but it found her anyway. His name was Elijah Hart. He was a tech consultant who volunteered part-time at a financial literacy nonprofit Amara partnered with. He had warm eyes, a quiet laugh, and a way of listening that made her feel seen, not evaluated. They started as collaborators. He helped her streamline operations for her growing e-commerce business. Then they became friends. Dinners after meetings, texts during the day. He asked questions about Zion. He remembered the names of her employees. One rainy afternoon, as they packed up a community pop-up event, Elijah turned to her. "You know," he said, "I used to think strength was silence. But watching you, what you built, it showed me strength is the choice to keep going with your heart open." Amara felt her throat tighten. She didn't say anything, but 2 weeks later she invited him to Zion's 3rd birthday. He showed up with a storybook and a smile. Zion adored him. By the end of the party, Elijah was chasing toddlers and helping clean up spilled juice like he belonged. That night, Amara stood by the window, watching Elijah buckle Zion into his car seat after offering them a ride. And her heart whispered something she hadn't heard in years. Hope. 2 years passed. Amara and Elijah built a life slow and steady. He proposed on a quiet beach at sunset, Zion throwing seashells in the waves nearby. She said yes, tears streaking her face, the past finally distant enough to breathe. They married in a garden ceremony surrounded by wildflowers and people who had stood by her through the storm. Imani officiated. Zion walked her down the aisle. Later, she danced with Elijah under strings of fairy lights, his hand warm at her waist, his lips at her ear. "No one could ever dim you," he whispered. "You were always the sun." Somewhere across town, Jaden watched the wedding photos online. He closed the screen slowly, then looked at his empty living room. His phone buzzed with a payment reminder. He let it ring. Amara woke early now, not from stress, but from joy. Elijah brewed coffee while she packed Zion's lunch. The house was full of laughter and morning music. She was at peace. Her empire had risen from the rubble of heartbreak. Her crown wasn't gold or jeweled. It was the life she built with her own hands, the son she raised in love, and the man who stood by her in every storm. And as the sun rose outside her window, Amara smiled, knowing this time, this was her real fairy tale.